Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. This is Nate Gustafson, and I'm so glad to spend this time with you today. This is part one of a multiple part series of teachings that I'm going to be presenting, and I'm calling it Seeing the World Through the Word. I don't know about you, but if you're anything like me, one of the first things you do when you wake up in the morning is you reach for those glasses. You reach for something to be able to see clearly. I've had to wear glasses since I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I don't remember the last time I saw clearly without glasses or contacts in. And it seems like that's the case for a lot of people in this world. There's a lot of people, of the 7 billion people alive on this earth, there are a lot of people walking around nearsighted. And I'm not talking about just physical eyesight. I'm talking about the way they see the world. I'm talking about the clarity of their vision, the clarity of the interpretation of how they make sense of this crazy world that we live in. And so I wanted to come up with a series to help us all discover how we see the world and how that shapes the way we live, but ultimately not just how we see the world, but to see the world through the lens of the Word. The eternal Word being Jesus Christ, and the Word of God, the written Word, the Bible, the inspired Holy Scriptures, that if we saw the world with Word vision, then I think that we'd live so much more clearly. We'd live with purpose and intention. We'd live with much more heartfelt compassion. And I just want to present this today to help you realize that if you align your life by the Word, if you put on Word-shaped glasses to look at the world around you, you will be so much better off. You will find so much more joy and peace and meaning for your life. And that's my goal here through this series, is not only to fill our heads with some sort of knowledge. I hope you gain some knowledge in these teachings, but I want to fill your heart with hope. I want your heart to come alive, to be awakened to the possibility that through the Word of God, through the Son of God, that's the lens of which we put over our eyes to make sense of this senseless world. So how do you see the world? The lens in which you see the world is your worldview. You might ask, well, what's a worldview? I've never heard of that term before. That's just a term that basically all of us have a default setting of the way that we look at the world. We see things in front of us, whether it's a beautiful Rocky Mountain picture, whether it's a flower in our garden, or we see the snow-capped peaks of the Rocky Mountains, or the white ocean caps of the Pacific. Whatever it is we see, we take into our eyes, into our brain, and we start to try to make sense of it. And the lens, the filter that we use of making sense of our world is our worldview. And so we want to take a look at what is a definition of a worldview. Well, a worldview is a set of presuppositions. These might be assumptions which may be true, they may partially be true, or they may even be entirely false, which we hold either consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently, about the basic makeup of our world. So again, it's a worldview is that underneath the surface, it's underneath the waterline, the iceberg, only we see the top 10%. But a worldview is what's below the surface that helps us make sense of our world. It's presuppositions, preconceived notions of what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false, what's really real as we look at the world around us. So how you see the world depends on a number of factors. And you may think that, yeah, Nate, I've got perfect 20/20 vision. The way I see the world is the way how everybody should see the world. And I'm not here to argue with you about that. I'm just here to encourage you to ask the question, what's my vision at? Let's do a self-vision check. It's kind of like looking at the numbers on the wall when you go to the doctor's office, or you go to get your eyes checked to see if you can read the finest print, when the eye doctor says, cover one eye and read the tiniest print that you can. That helps to determine whether you're seeing with 20/20 vision or not. So here are some factors to help you realize if you're seeing with 20/20 vision. Sometimes our family of origin can help or harm our vision. Sometimes our cultural or economic status, again, it can help or it can harm the way that we see the world. These are just kind of like parts of our DNA, parts of our makeup that will impact us, whether we're nearsighted, farsighted, or whether we're spot on with perfect 20/20 vision. Sometimes formal religious beliefs or formal kind of specific philosophical reasons for the way the world is or what we hold to. And yet, in times of critical and tumultuous events, we oftentimes refer back to these lenses that we wear to make sense of the world. Again, how we react to a certain critical or tumultuous event will reveal a lot about what our worldview really is, what the lenses are of which we look through to make sense of the senseless. And sometimes if we just operate and say, well, I don't have a clue what my worldview is, I don't have a clue about any sort of assumptions or presuppositions or any of that nonsense, well, you're looking at the world through unknown lenses, and oftentimes unknown lenses can be the blurriest lenses of all. It's like they're just coated in gunk and dirt, and it doesn't allow us to see clearly. It's like a big smudge stain, even on your sunglasses when you're trying to, watch a ball game on a bright sunny day. If you have smudges all over your sunglasses, it impacts your view. It impacts the way that you see what's unfolding in front of you. So first thing we need to do is discover what is our lens that we see the world through. How is our family, our lifestyle, our place in this world, how have all those things impacted the way that we make sense of the world around us? So take, for example, you see the Rocky Mountains and you realize that, boy, these are breathtaking images of the snow-capped peaks. Well, it makes you wonder, as you take that into your mind, as you take that into consideration, how did they get there? And the answer to that is your interpretation. I can look at it from science that tells me that geologic forces, as the plate tectonics came together and they pushed up the peaks that ultimately became known as the Rocky Mountains. I can maybe look at that from a theistic, or if I'm a creation viewpoint, I might say, well, I realize what that's from. God created the heavens and the earth. Or you may have another interpretation, or you might take both of those and merge them together to form the view that you feel like is best. That's a worldview. That's the lens in which you make sense of what you see in front of you. Or take, for example, what if you see great suffering? It breaks all of our hearts when we see on the news children across the world struggling with famine or war, or violence, or abuse. And it can happen even in our own backyards. Our own neighbors could be doing things that in the secret of their own household that would just make us cringe if we knew what was really going on. And if you see that come to light, you take that in through your lenses and you start to try to interpret it. And you might say, well, that makes me feel something. That raises up some emotion in my heart. I feel sad. I feel angry. I just want to punch the people that do this to these innocent children. Or it might raise questions of if there is a God, and if this God is so good, then why is there suffering in the world? Well, those are interpretation questions that we're trying to make sense of what we see in front of us. So your lens helps you see clearly what's in front of you, and then it helps you interpret what that means. So you can look at it through science, you can look at it through religion, you can look at it through philosophy, you can look at it just through family values that you were raised with, or a number of interpretations. But I want to strongly suggest that the one lens that will give us perfect 20/20 vision to see the world clearly, to make sense of the world as we try to interpret the world in front of us, is the vision of Jesus and the Word, the eternal Word, Jesus, as well as the eternal Word of God, the written Word, the divinely inspired Word, the perfect, absolute love story of God's will for humanity as it unfolds through time, space, and history. And if we align ourselves to Jesus and the Word, it'll help us do 5 things. It'll, number 1, help us make sense of the senseless. Number 2, it'll help us find true and fulfilling, meaningful life. Number 3, we can live with freedom. We can really make a difference, even if you're in a cubicle somewhere just punching numbers all day and not getting a lick of credit for what your possible talents and potential are. Even then, in your free moments or in your interactions with your coworkers, if you're seeing with 20/20 vision, you'll no longer see that as a wasted opportunity. You'll see that as an opportunity to lift someone's spirits, to really make a difference in this world. I know that for me, when I started to consider how I came to view things the way I see them and started to really piece together my own vision, my own word vision, I realized it wasn't just what my family taught me. It wasn't just what my church taught me. There were things I liked about that I've held on to over the years, and there's things I've distanced myself from over the years because I don't feel like they're accurate. I don't feel like it gives the best 2020 vision for how to answer the biggest questions on earth, because all of us are searching for love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And I believe that only through 2020 vision of seeing the world through the eyes of Jesus and seeing our own life through the lens of Jesus and his word will the opportunity come, and the opportunity to connect to something greater than just ourselves, to receive that unconditional love that God has for us, to receive forgiveness for all the times we've come up short, all the failings, all the faults that we have. That's what we're all longing for, isn't it? Isn't that what we all want? And that's why a vision of the word and the wisdom of Jesus brings this into light. So Jesus and the word. Jesus is referred to as the Word in the Gospel of John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. In the beginning was the Word. Something to that effect. I may have not got that exactly right, but you can read it for yourself. Just Google John 1, and you'll be able to read the whole chapter and see how Jesus is revealed to all of us throughout time now as the Word, as the Logos. In Greek understanding, when the Bible was written, they were in a Greek culture, even though they were Jewish people. Jesus was Jewish, his followers were Jewish, but they lived in a Greek culture. So the idea of the word, this eternal energy, this eternal spirit, this eternal wisdom called the word, John's readers would immediately grasp that, oh, that's Jesus. That's who this is that we want to align our life to. And it says that Jesus, this word, came in flesh. So God of all creation came into the flesh of this man, Jesus, born as a baby, lived, breathed, felt hunger and tiredness and pain and struggled, but never sinned. And yet that's who we turn to align our life to. We look at this world the way Jesus looked at this world. And by doing that, he helps us answer the biggest questions of life. What is really real? What do I see and what isn't seen? What is the nature of being a human? What is it all about to be human? What is this struggle really about? What happens when we die? We live in such a death-averse culture that so many people don't even want to raise the topic, and yet we literally are scared to death, scared of death in our world today. How do we know what is right and wrong? How do we decide what's right and wrong, or good or bad, or light or dark? And ultimately, what is the meaning of this time span on earth? Is it just live hard and die young and that's it? Or is there ultimately something more to live for? So I want to help you develop a framework for how you see the world. This 2020 word vision will help us see by putting together these four aspects: the creation, how things were intended to be; the fall, why things are so screwed up; redemption, how are we going to make things better; and then hope, something to hold on to when all hope seems lost. Is that this framework, this 2020 word vision, gives us an anchor, something to hold on to in the storms of life. And so I want to thank you for watching this today. We looked at what is a worldview. It's our lens in which we see the world, that we want to see it clearly. We want to be able to make sense of this world. We want to see how the word of Jesus, the word of God, the Bible, how aligning our life with the word helps us to live fully, to really have meaning and purpose and unconditional love and forgiveness and make a difference in this world, not just take up space, not just waste our 168 hours a week, but to have true, meaningful, exciting, adventurous life here on earth. And I believe it begins by answering the question, how do you see the world? How you see the world is where we begin to live life as word-focused people. So I hope you'll join me next time for the second part of our series as we look at the world through the word.